How's it going, everybody? My name is Artemio Zambrano Jr. I am a USAPL 105 kg lifter that recently pulled 705 at USAPL States Meet in Rancho Cucamonga. And today I'm here to just give you guys a couple tips that has helped me become a more efficient deadlifter. Alright, so I'm going to break it up into different topics for you guys. I have 3 set in mind, and then each of those are going to have subtopics. So the first one I want to talk about is your starting position. That's the first topic. The first subtopic for that is your feet positioning. A lot of people actually don't really know what to do with their feet when it comes to deadlifting, especially first timers. They just kind of put their feet under the bar and just go for it. The way I like thinking about it, specifically on a deadlift, is thinking about a high jump, right? So for me, a high jump is getting yourself in a proper position to jump as vertical as you can, right? So for me, it's about right here. People might vary, they might go a little bit wider, have a little bit closer, but especially in correlation with the deadlift, I like having a position where my body feels natural to be in to jump the highest. And that's essentially what a deadlift is. Because if we get under the bar in a deadlift, we're trying to pull up. We're doing this motion, here to here. Now, if you think about it like a vertical jump, we're doing here to here. We're mimicking the same idea, except now we're having an external force pulling against us. We have 3 different ideas of how we can put the bar over a foot. The first one would be, the bar being in our forefoot would be, the first thirds of our feet. If we have it in this position, the bar is really not going to get close to our body. We're not going to be as tight as we want to be, and when we start pulling, it's going to drag us forward because we have no use of our posterior chain to aid us lift it. Right. The second one would be too close to your body, which is on the latter part of your feet. Right. So it would be here, and now we're focusing more on our hamstrings, which is not the worst thing you could do. But to maximize what we're trying to do here on a deadlift, I like keeping it here on the midfoot because now we're activating our hamstrings and our quads as we're going through the motion. And I will show you guys later on in the video what I mean by that. So the second one would be too close torsions or on our forefoot here, on our lateral part of our foot. And now we're using straight posterior chain to lift it up. Which again is not the worst, but it's not the most efficient way to deadlift either. Now, when we say too far, the reason why I said it's not the most efficient, it's because we're staying more in our posterior chain. When we do a jump, like we spoke about earlier, we use both our quads and our hamstrings to jump up, right? And by doing that, we stay more midfoot to achieve that high jump. We don't really jump in our heels because we can't really maximize that, right? It's kind of weird to do that too. And if you jump in our forefeet, we got more of a lateral jump. If we say midfoot, instant, more efficiency on that. The third one, which I think it's most efficient because of what we spoke about, is a combination of using your posterior chain and your anterior chain to achieve the deadlift. So again, I like thinking about high jump. So what's going to give you the most power production to achieve that vertical jump? It's straight on the midfoot. All right, so now we got our feet positioning. We have the bar over our midfoot, and now let's talk about where our hands. Our hands, it's pretty much, whatever you feel the most comfortable with. I myself like keeping it a little bit closer, just because that's just me. I like keeping it right where my pointer fingers are right. In the meeting of the knurling and pretty much the part that has the knurling. There's there's multiple mixed grips that you can do. For me, I like doing just the basic mixed grip here. I know there's people that do hook grip, there's people that could potentially even do no hook grip and just do double overhand, which is extremely hard and I wouldn't recommend it because a lot of people don't have the grip strength for it. Now about as how wide you should go with your hands, I wouldn't recommend you going too far because now you're essentially having your back take most of the load when you go further, right? So here we're getting our back here, and now we're pulling more kind of like a snatch. When it comes basically to a basic deadlift, I would recommend a little bit shorter than these knurlings outside here. And again, for me, it's just a little bit more narrow. Now, the last couple of subtopics I want to talk to you guys about is your hip positioning and what your back should be doing during the starting position. So your hips, for me, I have long femurs, which I'm actually not really built to deadlift. I just work my butt off to get where I'm at. And obviously, if you have goals of your own, you're going to do whatever you can to achieve it, right? So for me, my hip positioning is about here. I know a lot of people start a little bit higher, a little bit lower. It's whatever feels more comfortable for you, but if you notice, and I've noticed this around here at One World, if you notice that your hips kind of shoot up first and then you deadlift, or if you start too low and now you're just going up, or you're starting too high and you're kind of stiff-legging it, those could be some cues of some errors in your technique, right? So now when we start going heavier, if let's say we do too low, now we can't get the bar off the ground because we don't have proper leverage or proper mechanics in your body to be able to lift that bar off the ground. Now if you're starting too high, which is essentially stiff leg deadlift, if you're starting here, now your back's going to be taken over, your hamstrings are going to get out of the question, and you're going to start lifting like this. Now, the most important one, I think, and I had this problem earlier on in my lifting career, is that if your hips shoot up, right? It might not seem like a big problem because, say, in a CrossFit WOD or in a strength block or whatever, you're doing, let's say, maybe 225 for a couple reps. You won't notice it too much. But let's say we start getting into 1 rep maxes, like you start pulling towards 100% of your 1 rep max. That small little hip hinge here, it's going to lead to here, and now you're going to be struggling to get here. So again, in my past, I had that problem, and before I pulled the 705 this time around, I got stuck at 670 for the longest time, and that was because I had that slight hip hinge that really affected my lift. And it pretty much takes you from your starting position here, where everything's tight, to now you loosen up your hamstrings, and your back takes over that whole entire lift. And obviously with the deadlift, you want to get your legs as most involved as possible. All right, so we have our feet position, we have our bar over midfoot to make it most efficient. We have our hand positioning, we have our hip positioning, and now let's talk about what our back's doing, right? So with our back, our hips are set. Again, for me, I like having it around here. Yours might differ, or whatever you feel more comfortable in. So if we're in this position here, and let's say our back starts here, right? We have no tightness in our back, and let's say we start the lift. As you can tell, instantly, your back is starting to round. And again, that might not seem like a problem when you're dealing with 135, but if I tried pulling 705 with my back like this, I would instantly feel every single vertebrae in my back just slowly popping. So to minimize that, I like getting myself and really think about keeping my chest up as much as possible and trying to essentially achieve minimal distance between my upper back and my lower back. So what I mean by that is literally trying to keep myself like this. So I'm trying to essentially attach my upper back with my lower back. And now we're bringing that position into here. Obviously it gets harder because we're adding the hip hinge. So if we start here, getting our starting position, chest up, and lift. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is your air, right? Is how to brace your core properly. So we have everything else that we talked about, and now let's talk about how we get the maximize, or how do we maximize the air into our lungs as we lift. Right. So for me, I like getting my air at the top. So as soon as I have my grip here, my hands are set, my feet are set, my hips are set, I like taking one small step up, and at this moment is where I take my air before I get set. So again, right, we're getting up for a deadlift. Let's imagine we have 700 on the bar. We get our hands set, feet are set, hips are set. I let go a little bit, tighten up, and then boom. So now let's talk about when we do, so this is specifically for 1 rep max, but let's talk about if we do a 5 rep max, 6 rep, whatever it is, right, in a WOD or in our programs. The way I like getting my air is instead of having it come down, restarting, and then coming back up, if I know I'm gonna do it for reps, I like getting my air, let go a little bit up top, regain my air, reset, come up. Now there's different ways to do it. I've just noticed that for me, that's the easiest way to do it. So now that we have our starting position covered, let's talk about how to actually lift the deadlift. For me, I like thinking about it as in 3 portions, and each one has its individual accessories for it. We'll go over it on that with another video. But what I mean by 3 portions to it, I mean your starting position, here to, I would say, like upper shin, from upper shin to lower quad. I like calling that the transitional phase, which is phase 2, and then your upper quad to lockout is phase 3. So those are 3 different phases, and I train those specifically in detail to maximize my deadlift. But as far as when we talk about this video, how we start finally pulling, right? We have our feet positioning, we have everything we talked to, everything's ready to go, hips are tight, back is tight. Now, what I like thinking about right before I start deadlifting is keeping that bar as close to your body as possible. I literally grind that onto my shins, and if you see a close-up, you'll see I have some pretty good looking scars. Not too much on this. I do actually have a straight line. And then I don't know if you can really tell, but some sides are hairier than others, and the parts that I deadlift on are pretty much empty of hair, and that's how tight I'm keeping that. So there's a couple of purposes to that. One is you're pretty much making sure you're staying on your midfoot as you're grinding that bar, and 2, that's how you achieve maximal tightness in your back as you're coming up with the bar. So you can see from the sides as well the difference between keeping tight and driving that shin across your body versus not keeping tight. So the first one I'm gonna do is not keeping tight. So I'm here. I'm still gonna drag the body, the bar across my body, but I'm not gonna keep it tight. So that's what that looks like. So one more time. And now the second time, I'm gonna think about trying to bend that bar with my shins. So right here. And as you can see from that, essentially once I start the bending process, my lats get into position, my shoulders drop back, and I'm able to efficiently lift up that deadlift with a tight back. And having that proper position here versus keeping it curved, it's going to be the difference between you making that lift and not making that lift. So we talked about starting position, we talked about keeping the bar as close as we can, and why that's important as we go up on our deadlift. Now, I just want to finish off with just a couple mental cues that I like to keep in my mind that will for sure help you guys be more efficient on your deadlifts. Just the first one is obviously thinking of a vertical jump, and I literally think about that as I set up for my deadlift. As soon as I keep tight, I think of myself, vertical jump, activate your quads as you're going through your deadlift. As soon as that happens, I like thinking about as soon as the bar passes your knees, be aggressive with your hips. And what I mean by that is as soon as, like literally what that means is being aggressive with your hips, popping your hips forward as soon as the bar passes your knees. So we're here, we're keeping it tight, boom, bar stays tight. As soon as those knees, the bar passes the knees, you're shooting your hips, you're being aggressive. Why? Just because once it starts getting heavier, it's gonna be a lot harder to do that. Obviously it's 135, you could practice it till the day's end with 135, but if you start practicing with 400, 500, 600, it's gonna be a lot harder. And you'll notice once you start getting closer to your 1 rep max, that you being aggressive with your hips on those lighter weights is gonna help you just to finish off that lift. Because worst case scenario, you might grind it out and you'll be here shaking it off, finish it off, you'll still get it. But if we don't practice being aggressive with our hips, this is where we get stuck. Our knees lock out, our hips are still slightly behind us, and our back is still in front of us, and we get stuck here. there's nothing worse than being able to achieve a lift 99%, and just because you're not being aggressive with your hips to finish it off, right? That's the difference between here and here. No lockout, lockout. Red lights, white lights, right? And that was one of the problems I had, was me not being too aggressive. And as soon as I started getting better at that, my lifts started going up. And that's, I would say, with the 705 that I pulled, the reason why I was able to pull it was because I worked literally my butt off to get to that point. And the third one is obviously what we talked about, is keeping that bar in a bended position over our shins as we lift up. Those are the three topics I wanted to talk to you guys about to make your deadlifts more efficient. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask me. I'll be here at One World, or you guys can find me on Instagram, BigArt18, BIGART18, or feel free to leave a comment if you guys liked it, or if you guys wanted to see something different on this video. Thanks guys, you guys have a good one.